Welcome to BookLeesh, where every book becomes a journey, and every journey brings you closer to the person you're meant to be. What if I told you the one thing standing between you and your dream life is a frog? Not just any frog, but the ugliest, most uncomfortable task you keep avoiding, the one that holds the power to change everything. Today, we're diving deep into Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, a book that doesn't just teach you how to manage time, it teaches you how to master yourself. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or trapped in a cycle of delay and distraction, this isn't just a book summary. This is your breakthrough moment. So get ready, because by the end of this video, you won't just think differently, you'll live differently. Let's begin. They say time is money, but the truth is time is life. And yet, most of us trade it so carelessly. We scroll, we delay, we postpone our dreams in the name of tomorrow. But what if the secret to transforming your life isn't hidden in some grand master plan, but in a frog? Sounds strange? That's where the magic begins. In Eat That Frog, Brian Tracy drops a truth bomb that's as quirky as it is powerful. If you have to eat a live frog, do it first thing in the morning. Because once that's out of the way, the rest of your day gets a lot easier. But here's the catch. That frog is your most important task. The one thing that will make the biggest difference. The one thing you keep avoiding. We all have frogs. Tasks we hate. Phone calls we dread. Dreams we delay. And somewhere between avoidance and anxiety, our potential quietly slips away. But then Brian Tracy challenges this delay-driven world with one bold idea: eat that frog. Face the hardest thing first. Get it done. Not someday. Today. But how do we do that when everything feels urgent? When our to-do lists are bursting? When motivation feels like a distant luxury? Brian doesn't just offer cliches, he hands us a blueprint. A clear, practical, tested system to master our minutes and conquer procrastination before it quietly ruins our lives. The book begins with the most liberating idea: you can't do everything, but you can always do the most important thing. And once you do that consistently, everything changes. So he teaches us the power of clarity. You can't hit a target you can't see. Most people procrastinate not because they're lazy, but because they're unclear about their goals, about their values, about what really matters. So Brian urges us to sit down, think right, define your big goals, break them down, prioritize them. Suddenly, that frog isn't so slimy, it's just step one. But then comes the real conflict. Even when we know what matters most, we avoid it. We clean the house instead of writing the report. We answer emails instead of working on the business. We stay busy, but not effective. Why? Because frogs are scary, and familiar distractions are comforting. That's where discipline steps in, not as punishment, but as power. Brian says discipline isn't just about willpower, it's about creating systems that make success automatic. So he introduces the ABCD method. List your tasks, label them by importance. A is crucial, B is important, C is optional, D is delegate, E is eliminate. And once you see it in black and white, the truth hits hard. Most of what we do doesn't really matter. But then comes the beautiful twist. Once you commit to doing the A tasks first, the frogs, your momentum grows. You feel in control. You start your day with purpose, not panic. You stop reacting. You begin creating. Brian emphasizes another powerful rule, the 80-20 principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. But most people spend their day in the 80% that barely moves the needle. That's where overwhelm lives. That's where procrastination thrives. But if you flip the equation, focus on the high-impact 20, you unlock progress, peace, and productivity. But here's the uncomfortable truth. High-impact work is also high resistance. It's the book you've been meaning to write, the business you're afraid to start, The honest conversation you've delayed for months. It's the frog. And no amount of planning replaces the courage to do. That's why Brian tells us to launch fast. Don't wait for perfection. Perfection is procrastination wearing a mask. Instead, start. Begin. Even before you're ready. Because clarity often comes through action, not before it. But then self-doubt whispers again. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? That's when Brian reminds us of a deeper truth. Successful people feel fear too. They just act anyway. They've trained their minds to push past the initial resistance, to take that first bite of the frog, even when it tastes bitter. And then something amazing happens. Once you take action, once you start the hard thing, your brain stops panicking. The fog lifts. Momentum takes over. And the task that once felt enormous becomes doable. Brian also dives into time blocking. He calls it the power of chunks. Allocate specific blocks of time to your frogs. Protect those blocks like gold. During that time, no distractions. No phone. No social media. Just deep, focused work. The kind that moves mountains. Because what you do in focused hours, others struggle to do in entire days. But the world isn't quiet. Notifications scream. Messages buzz. Distractions are designed to seduce. That's where Brian's wisdom hits hard. Technology should serve you, not enslave you. So turn off what doesn't help. Unplug what doesn't build. Simplify your environment so your mind can breathe and focus. He brings up the salami slice method, breaking big tasks into tiny, manageable slices. Just do the first slice, then the next, and then another. Before you know it, the frog is gone. The burden is lighter, and progress is real. But perhaps the most important lesson in the book isn't about frogs or tasks. It's about belief. Brian reminds us, you are capable of far more than you think. Procrastination doesn't mean you're broken, it just means you're scared. But beneath the fear, there's brilliance. And that brilliance awakens the moment you take action. Now imagine a life where your most important work gets done first. Where the frogs don't haunt your day, they fuel it. Where you go to bed feeling proud, not guilty. Calm, not chaotic. This book is not just about productivity, it's about self-respect. When you do the hard thing first, you're telling yourself, my goals matter. My time matters. I matter. And that belief changes everything. And that's just the beginning. But just knowing isn't enough. The world is full of people who know what they should do, but never do it. That's why Brian brings us to the power of commitment. Until you commit to your goals, your growth, your frogs, you'll always have an escape door. A way to delay, distract, and disappear. But once you commit, the mind shifts. The excuses get quieter. The mission gets louder. Still, commitment alone doesn't guarantee ease. In fact, the moment you commit, resistance often grows louder. You'll notice the urge to scroll, the whisper of do it later. That's not failure. That's proof you're on the right track. Resistance shows up most when you're close to something meaningful. So Brian gives us tools to fight back. One of the most powerful is simply beginning your day early. It sounds simple, but starting your day with clarity, before the noise of the world floods in, gives you a sacred edge. That early silence isn't just peaceful, it's powerful. It lets you meet your frogs head-on, before anyone else even wakes up. And when you do that, something changes in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids. You become someone who executes, who decides, who leads, even in the smallest things. But we live in a culture of urgency. Every ping feels important. Every task screams for attention. That's where Brian drops another gem. Urgency is not the same as importance. Just because something feels urgent doesn't mean it deserves your energy. In fact, most urgent things are just distractions in disguise. So how do you fight back? By scheduling your priorities, not just prioritizing your schedule. Take your top goals. Write them down. Now schedule time for them in your calendar. Not someday, but today. Carve out time like it's sacred, because it is. And then comes the beautiful paradox. The more frogs you eat, the more confident you become. Confidence isn't born from books or motivation, it's built through execution. Each time you finish a hard task, you prove to yourself, I am capable. I can handle discomfort. I can do hard things. And slowly, that voice inside, the one that says, maybe tomorrow, starts to fade. But there's another conflict waiting: perfectionism. So many of us don't start because we're afraid it won't be perfect. But Brian reminds us that perfection is the enemy of productivity. It's a trap that keeps you polishing something no one will ever see. He urges us, be okay with good enough. Start messy. Get it out. Improve later. The world doesn't need your perfect work tomorrow, it needs your real work today. Then he brings up one of the hardest truths: you must learn to say no. To distractions. To obligations that don't align. To people who drain your energy. Every yes to something meaningless is a no to something that matters. And if you don't protect your time, the world will waste it for you. It sounds harsh, but it's actually freedom. Because every time you say no to what doesn't matter, you say yes to what does. You create space for clarity, for focus, for depth. And that depth? That's where your best work lives. Brian also introduces the law of forced efficiency. It's the idea that there's never enough time to do everything, but always enough time to do the most important thing. So instead of trying to do more, do less better. Focus like a laser. Say no like a warrior. And execute like your life depends on it, because it does. And just when it all starts making sense, Brian takes us even deeper into the idea of continuous improvement. He says, never stop getting better. Not because you're not enough now, but because growth is the path to freedom. Read, learn, reflect, adjust. Every small improvement compounds into massive change over time. But you'll get tired. You'll hit days where nothing feels right. Days when the frogs feel too big. That's where your why becomes your lifeline. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose behind your pursuit? Brian tells us to write it down. See it every day. Let your why anchor you when your willpower fades. Because purpose is stronger than motivation. And speaking of strength, he talks about the 3 Ds of success: decision, discipline, and determination. First, you decide what matters. Then you build the discipline to show up. And finally, you hold that line with determination through distractions, doubt, and difficulty. It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. And persistence, Brian says, is the master key. The difference between the winners and the wishers isn't talent. It's endurance. The ability to keep showing up. Keep eating frogs. Especially when you don't feel like it. This isn't just theory. Brian's life is proof. He went from laboring on ships and washing dishes to becoming one of the world's most respected productivity experts. Not because he was born extraordinary, but because he became obsessed with doing what matters. Every day, no matter what. That's what Eat That Frog teaches us. Not just how to work, but how to live. With intention. With clarity. With courage. So, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, if you're done with delay, if you're ready to take your time and your power back, then maybe it's time to eat the frog. Not tomorrow. Today. And when you finally begin to live like this, frog first, clarity first, action first, you notice something shift. Not just in your to-do list, but in your identity. You're no longer someone who's always behind, always catching up, always overwhelmed. You become someone who leads your life, not just reacts to it. But even then, the world won't get quieter. There will always be more messages, more tasks, more temptations to delay. That's why Brian insists on building rituals. Not routines driven by obligation, but rituals fueled by intention. A morning where you review your goals. A block of time carved out for deep work. An evening reflection that brings you back to your purpose. Because you can't master your minutes unless you first master your mind. He also shares a key productivity secret that most people overlook, one thing at a time. Multitasking is a lie. It feels productive, but it's actually just fast switching, and every switch drains your mental energy. So he urges us, go deep. Finish what you start. Train your brain to complete, not just to begin. And in that space of deep, focused work, you unlock something rare. Progress without panic. Movement without madness. You become centered in a world that constantly pulls you apart. But then comes the loneliness. Yes, loneliness. Because doing meaningful work often requires you to disconnect. To say no to parties. To pause notifications. To choose growth over gossip. That isolation can feel cold at first. But then it becomes your edge. Because while others are distracted, you're building. And in that space, your results compound. Brian calls this the magic of momentum. Small actions done daily stack like bricks. What starts as a simple frog becomes a fortress of discipline. You write one page, then a chapter. Make one call, then 100. Take one step, then run. But here's the beauty, it never starts big. It starts with one frog, one bold decision, one focused hour, and then everything shifts. Now here's something Brian emphasizes that most productivity books skip over: rest. Not laziness, not distraction, but real rest. Time away to reset your nervous system. Breaks that refuel you, not just entertain you. Because without rest, your energy burns out. And when your energy's gone, no system can save you. So yes, eat the frog, but also know when to stop, when to breathe, when to walk. Success isn't sprinting endlessly, it's knowing your pace and protecting it. Then comes one of his most powerful suggestions: visualize your goals. Not just write them, see them, feel them, imagine the life you're building. Why? Because the subconscious mind works best when it's emotionally involved. And if you can feel the future, you'll fight for it harder. But your environment matters too. Brian reminds us that clutter creates chaos. Your desk, your digital space, your surroundings, all of them either distract or direct you. So simplify. Create a space where focus is natural, not forced. Where frogs don't hide behind piles of paper or endless tabs. Where your mind walks in and knows, this is where I do the work. And speaking of environment, who you surround yourself with deeply impacts how often you eat your frogs. If your circle avoids growth, mocks ambition, or celebrates procrastination, you'll feel the pull to conform. But when your environment includes people who act fast, think big, and execute daily, you rise with them. You don't just need systems, you need standards. So Brian urges you to raise them, to stop tolerating low-value tasks, weak goals, unclear priorities, to say yes only to things that honor your mission. Because every yes writes your story, and a great story demands bold decisions. But there's one more lesson Brian shares, and it might be the most unexpected one of all. Enjoy the process. Eating frogs isn't supposed to be a punishment. It's the path to purpose, the art of becoming who you were meant to be. And once you see it that way, even the hardest tasks carry meaning. You realize discomfort is not your enemy. It's your gateway to growth. Resistance isn't a stop sign. It's a signal that you're stepping into something real. And when you live like that, not chasing comfort, but choosing meaning, you stop waiting for the perfect time. You stop needing permission. You stop hiding behind someday. You just begin. You begin now. Because life doesn't reward the busiest. It rewards the boldest. And boldness? It begins with one simple habit. Eat that frog. And as we reach the end of this journey, something becomes clear. It was never really about the frog. It was about you. About the person you become when you choose to face discomfort instead of running from it. About the way your energy shifts when you stop reacting to life and start directing it. About the pride that builds when you no longer need to wait for motivation because you've learned how to move without it. Eating the frog, it's a metaphor. But more than that, it's a mirror. A reflection of your relationship with fear, with delay, with your own potential. And the truth is, you're not here because you want another productivity tip. You're here because you're tired of waiting, tired of starting over, tired of looking back on your day, your week, your life, and wondering where the time went. Brian Tracy doesn't just give you a system. He gives you a shift in how you see time, how you value effort, and how you measure success. Not by how much you do, but by how deeply you commit. Not by how busy you stay, but by how boldly you begin. Every page of this book whispers the same truth. You are capable of more. More clarity, more focus, more freedom. But only if you choose it. And choice, that's what this all comes down to. You can choose to keep drifting, letting the days blend together, filled with distractions and delay. Or you can choose to wake up tomorrow, sit down, and do that one thing you've been avoiding. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. Because doing what matters, even when it's uncomfortable, is the fastest way to a life you're proud of. So ask yourself right now, what's your frog? Is it a phone call? A project? A dream you've buried under "I'll start next week"? Whatever it is, write it down. Stare it in the face. Then act not someday, not later. Now. And once you do, once you take that step, you'll understand what this book has been trying to tell you all along. That discipline isn't a cage, it's the key to freedom. That starting is scarier than doing. And that momentum is built one frog at a time. This book doesn't end with a final chapter. It ends with a question: what will you do now? Because if you've come this far, if you've listened this long, then something inside you is already changing. You're no longer content to watch your days disappear. You're ready to lead them. And when you begin to lead your days, you begin to lead your life. Not in theory, in action. So don't just finish this review with inspiration, finish it with execution. Pick one thing, your most important task, the one that makes your stomach turn. And do it, because that's what high performers do. That's what leaders do. That's what you do now. You eat that frog. And with every frog you finish, you reclaim something the world tries to steal from you every day. Your focus, your power, your time. This isn't just a habit. It's a revolution. A quiet, powerful rebellion against mediocrity. And you? You just became a part of it. So take a breath. Look at your day. And begin. If you found value in this journey, if this message lit something inside you, then don't stop here. Read the book. Live the book. Let it guide you every single morning. And if this voice helped you shift, even just a little, subscribe to BookLeesh right now for more soul-shifting book reviews that don't just speak to your mind, but awaken your mission. Your next level is waiting. Thank you for staying with me this far. Thank you for believing in your growth. And thank you for choosing to act. This is BookLeesh, and your transformation has just begun.